The Times reported that people at Cambridge Analytica and its British affiliate, the SCL Group, were in contact with executives from Lukoil, the Kremlin-linked oil giant, as Cambridge built its Facebook-derived profiles. Lukoil was interested in the ways data was used to target American voters, according to two former company insiders. SCL and Lukoil denied that the talks were political in nature and said the oil giant never became a client. Well, what about the intelligence opportunities that presented themselves? So even if, the SCL leadership may have said, we're not going to be in business with Lukoil has so much money and so many contacts, or just Russian, standard Russian intelligence may...
And it's full of KGB operatives.
Yeah, they may just buy the data. If you can buy it, with the regular channels, you might find some back channels to buy the same stuff. And so Facebook data gathered by Cambridge Analytica was accessed from Russia, a British MP has said. Damian Collins, who was leading a parliamentary inquiry, or was leading a parliamentary inquiry into fake news, told the media that the Information Commissioner's Office, ICO, had found evidence that files were accessed from Russia and other countries. A University of Cambridge professor, Alexander Kogan, had passed on information to Cambridge Analytica and others after launching a Facebook app. Kogan, who has also worked at St. Petersburg State University, denied handing Facebook data to any Russian entity. At Cambridge, Kogan founded the Cambridge Pro-Sociality and Well-Being Lab, that sounds really nice, where he and his students conducted research on understanding the biology and psychology of love, close relationships, happiness, and kindness. Later, Kogan researched the links between oxytocin, that's a hormone, a neurotransmitter, and social processes. Findings from Kogan's research suggest that individuals with a special variant of the oxytocin receptor gene were viewed as more trustworthy. Kogan and his lab have authored numerous other papers linking oxytocin to positive emotions, facial mimicry, and theory of mind. In related work, Kogan found that baseline vagus nerve activity was also related to people's well-being. So they're looking at everything and the kitchen sink. Now, oxytocin, for example, is when women have babies, and they're carrying around the little babies, and both of them have a really strong reaction. The mother and the baby, lots of oxytocin, and normally, when you spend quite a lot of time with your little kids, they always like to be close. They like to be physically close because of that oxytocin effect. Now, I've noticed that political propaganda, especially nowadays, is often shaped to seem like you're in a room talking with friends, buddies. So they will tell you, grab a beer, lower your inhibitions basically, grab an alcoholic drink or some food, anything will do, and then listen to these cool people talk about, Russia and Ukraine and Trump and all these things. And it's the whole thing is almost like a religious ceremony where they simply reinforce the belief and the feeling of bonding and being together on this great adventure. Everybody's supposed to feel like they are the rebels in a Star Wars movie. Like they almost have magical powers in this group. So this is something I noticed quite a bit when people give you bad information, but they're trying to be really, really friendly, and they just want to be your friend. But the message really doesn't fit that kind of behavior. And there's Steve Bannon involved, and you've talked about Bannon and his weird ideas and his pro-Russian leanings and that sort of stuff. In 2014, Steve Bannon, then a vice president at Cambridge Analytica, had the firm testing messages around or concerning Putin and Russian expansion, according to this Wiley guy. Now, this was what was the name? Christopher Wiley, who was sort of who talked to a Senate panel. So, so according to Wiley, Cambridge Analytica was testing people. How would they react to aggressive Russian expansion? How do they see Putin? How do they view the Russians? How could you approach them? How would they react? So of course, Russia was already planning a large invasion because it takes years to prepare. They didn't just make the decision in early 2022. This decision was made years earlier. But they wanted to know, how is the West going to react when we attack Ukraine? So apparently, Steve Bannon was a vice president at Cambridge Analytica, and they were testing audiences. How would they react to Putin's next wars, apparently. Wiley told members of the U.S. House Judiciary and Oversight Committee that under Bannon's instruction, the firm discussed Putin with focus groups, tested images of the Russian president, and asked questions about Russian expansion in Eastern Europe. Wiley added that it was the only foreign issue, or foreign leader, I should say, being tested at the time I was there. Now imagine what the Russians would use this information for. Of course, they presented. I think this started in 2012 when the Russians decided to paint Vladimir Putin as the white power leader of the world. So he's supposed to be the most conservative Christian savior of the white race. And he loves conservatives. That was the marketing. And I think that was the only marketing that provided sort of a protection against, opinion fallout in the United States. Because what happened after the Ukraine war began? The invasion against Ukraine began. You saw these narratives. Well, it was NATO's fault. It was Ukraine's fault, and Russia had no choice. And it's better that Russia controls Ukraine, because then Ukraine will be Christian and conservative. But if the globalists, whoever they are, if the globalists take over Ukraine, they will turn it into a gay hellhole. And so this is
there's a.
And they can test these narratives. They can literally pick people from the target audience and say, okay, imagine if, just hypothetically imagine Putin is invading Ukraine. And they give you these, arguments for it. What do you think about it?
And they really have reoriented a lot of conservative opinion in the U.S. A useful book, Benjamin Teitelbaum wrote a book called War for Eternity Inside Bannon's Far-Right Circle of Global Power Brokers. And it mentions Wiley in the book, by the way, which you just were talking about. It talks about all of Bannon's relationships, both in his business dealings and also politically. And one of the shocking revelations to me in the book was, of course, we know about his relationship to Miles Guo, the Chinese billionaire defector who has kind of messed up some conservatives, some anti-communist conservatives have cost Bill Gertz plenty, and Michael Waller got hurt by him. I think Michael Waller still has a legal case involving Miles Guo. But there was in the book, what was most shocking was the November 2018 secret meeting in Rome between Bannon and Alexander Dugin, the Eurasianist philosopher and advisor to Putin, supposedly, who taught at Moscow State University and I believe now has offices in China, right?
Yeah.
And so you see, I was on with Bannon in 2022. I was on his show, and he told me, he said, "Well, don't you believe we need to get this war in Ukraine over with so we can align with Russia against China?" Is what he said to me. It's like, I'm like, and I think it was during a commercial break he said that to me.
What
and it was
year
like,
was that?
I was like, oh my
gosh. What year was that?
What's that?
What year was that? Because that sounds like
That was in 2022. That was in.
Oh God,
I think it was
that's what
June of
naive people. That's
2022.
what naive people believed in. Let's say the Bush years. The 2000s.
Yeah, yeah, right.